spirits within. It is not a fairy tale. It is true.
Did it work? Am I in?
Loud
Corey?
and clear, buddy.
Hell yeah. I can't believe that worked.
My God. All right. Whew. So thank you so much. I know that you wanted to kind of get in on this season, and I figured what better way than to broadcast a pirate signal, and I thank you so much for aligning those towers.
Yeah, I mean, I had to break maybe a few local ordinances, but, not worse for wear.
I kind of forgot why we're here. Why are we here?
We're here to talk about the spinoff of Final Fantasy that everyone really wants to talk about.
Oh, yeah. It's time to finally talk about Final Fantasy, the spirits within.
We're going to get so inside those spirits.
Oh, I feel them inside of me right now.
Penetrating deep.
I gotta say, I've never wanted to watch this movie more times in 1 year than I have in this entire instance.
Sometimes you just wake up and you think, I want to watch Final Fantasy Spirits Within, but I also want to watch it 12 times.
I feel kind of the same way about some fast food. Like, I'll drive by every once in a while and I'm like, when's the last time that I actually had a burger from this fast food joint? Get it, eat it, immediately regret my entire existence.
Yep. Then rinse and repeat.
Yeah, but I mean, I didn't actually hate the time that I spent with this movie, but there are definitely some times in it that, like, it overstays its welcome. And you can definitely feel that on, like, the third time that you watch it within a month.
I mean, I just remember when this movie came out, I was so stoked for a Final Fantasy movie. And then I watched it and I was like, when is the Final Fantasy?
I mean, they don't even say the titular, this is the Final Fantasy.
They don't even say they're tired of all these Final Fantasies.
Yeah, all these motherfucking Final Fantasies.
These spirits within.
Final fantasies within. Yeah. But they say something super close in the actual movie. They say this the spirit that dwells beneath. That's as close as they get to like a titular title. Like they even rob us of that.
It's actually a localization error. Like the Japanese is much clearer.
Is there even a Japanese? I try to think about that, but like I think this movie was literally like created and written, and then it was adapted specifically by the cast. And what's actually kind of making me crack up right now, I'm on IMDb, and it says cast and credits orders complete but awaiting verification. Nobody wants to verify that these people actually did this movie.
No one wants to go on the record and spout the real facts, but we're here to bring it to you.
Yeah, but I mean, you have MVP Steve Buscemi is in this movie.
I was saying it's a star-studded cast. Like, I can't believe the people that crop up in this movie.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, there's Ming-Na Wen, there's Alec Baldwin, bit of a controversial person right now. We have Ving Rhames, Steve Buscemi, Donald Sutherland, James Woods, Keith David. I mean, these are fantastic voice actors and fantastic actors.
They're too good for this movie.
All right, well, you know what? We're going to stick it to them for not inviting you on the Final Fantasy IV season and having not been on in over a year. So now we're going to forcefully put you into their spin-off series with the spin-off they should have spent time with. Too busy watching Advent Children in the Discord and English localization and original Japanese subtitles.
I mean, I will say one thing about this movie, like, much in the way of a lot of Final Fantasy games, it absolutely is a fever dream. And for that, I think it does deserve to remain in the canon.
So to kind of touch on that a little bit, you have a movie that tried to do so many crazy different things. So I'm going to give a little bit of a background of it. So it came out in 2001, which already was kind of crazy. Final Fantasy VIII was released in 1998, if I'm not mistaken. And then Final Fantasy IX was created in 2000, or released in 2000. But this movie had been in development around both of those games' development. I think this movie got started around like 1998, early 99. And you have the graphics of this still kind of hold up really nowadays. Like this movie kind of looks like how current day
I was gonna say the same
games are
thing,
just
yeah.
playing. So it's like it finally took like 20 years to kind of get up to this point, which is kind of crazy.
This game really makes you feel like Aki.
So yeah, let's go ahead and get on into it. So the movie opens up on
The far-off year.
the world
Only
of
40 years from now.
2065. We are on Earth, and yeah, the so far off year of Earth 2065. But we open up in this kind of a strange open orange like desert, like straight up like Instagram filter, like early Instagram filter world, where there's like some kind of earthquakes and
It's very like Another World, right? It's very like old school computer adventure game kind of world.
like Reboot.
Yeah, definitely.
It's very Reboot. But so like there's a large earthquake and we get to meet our main character. Later on we learn that her name is Aki Ross. She is a doctor. And it cuts out of that dream just into her at inside space, inside of some sort of pod with the day.
Crucially, there is this like enigmatic shot, right, of like her foot stepping on like some kind of scorpion or some kind of like weird bug creature. And it's like she's standing on water. Like there's all this like very dreamlike imagery and ripples going out, and then the ground shakes. Like so, there's something happening, right?
Yeah. So naturally, the audience is kind of at a loss. Like, all right, well, what was that? What did we just saw? Why is it recording her dreams? We get a little bit of narration and a little bit of understanding that, it's been 34 years since these spirits arrived and it plunged the world into annihilation. So apparently they arrived in 2031 to save us from all of our complicated problems.
Totally unrelatable. Like, can't imagine something happening and causing mass annihilation.
Yeah. So we learn that, humankind has been kind of segregated to these little refuges that people kind of live in fear in.
Yeah, these liberal bubbles.
There's some nice bubbles, though.
They're very nice bubbles. Probably the rent's probably pretty expensive, though.
Yeah, but I mean, the rent in the bio bubble, in the biodome, as it were, you got to live. You can't live out in the wastelands. The spirits will get you.
It does have a built-in gym, though, so that's nice.
That it do. So, we don't get as much context as we were hoping for, but basically she kind of jumps into the cockpit of her pod and then just makes a beeline towards a specific location.
I want to live in the pod.
Yeah, I want that pod life. Got that. But it's cool, right? The real hope of our humanity is out in space. Let's put all the workers out in space.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool too, right? Like she comes down into like New York City, right? Like Times Square, really. Like it's like Midtown Manhattan.
Yeah, it's kind of nice to get us like an actual location because I mean we're under the assumption whenever we see like sci-fi movies that it's like, okay, maybe this isn't Earth, maybe this is like something else.
Well, it's also the first moment of like, okay, this is Earth, like actual Earth. Like I thought this was Final Fantasy. Like why aren't we on like Gaia or whatever?
Well, maybe we'll touch on that later.
Ooh, stay tuned, viewers.
Well, they have to. We've taken over.
We're broadcasting on all channels.
Complete domination. So we land in New York City. She steps out of her little ship and kind of fires off these strange little like fuel or what is it? Flares.
Little magic missiles.
That like, yeah, they have like this weird like sparkle effect that like sometimes we're on like early like GeoCities websites like to bedazzle your images.
I mean, yeah, they are clearly doing some shots and showing off their tech, right? Like her dream had this like cool shot of her eye and like the eye like subtly dilating and stuff, like, and they're doing some lighting, except they're trying to flex the new tech they've got here for this movie, right? It's like very photorealistic for the time. It's impressive.
what's kind of weird to me about like this flare thing is that it doesn't do anything to like really light up the area, and like without all like the light pollution, like night would be pretty dark.
Yeah.
So you would think if she's kind of firing off a flare, it's for a lighting purpose, but we learn as she's investigating through this, it's to kind of draw a little bit more visibility to these strange orange things that start to emerge from the ground, very, very eldritch.
Yeah. I mean, clearly this substance she shot off, like it reacts to like things, because she puts her hand out and it lands on her hand and there's this like blue kind of vapor that comes out. So like it's some kind of thing, maybe to draw out things that might be invisible or something. Her scanner was like looking for life or something, so maybe that's what it's for.
We get a brief moment of kind of like shock as we notice that there is some other troops that have just kind of landed in the area. So we don't know, like the feelings of it, what they're looking for. Are they like friend or foe? Is she trespassing? They kind of catch
very
up
Halo, they're very like, they got the like, the masks and the goggles and stuff, like big boys with guns. It's
very dehumanizing too, because the way that they start to talk to it, like you can get like the sense of like a familiarity, but our main character doesn't recognize anything that's kind of going on. It just kind of seems like she seems to be at odds with the military presence. It seems to be kind of like disturbing.
It's a good point, right? Like, I mean, she's in danger. There's monsters attacking. They're ostensibly here to save her, but you're right. We don't get to see their faces. They're like these anonymous, like SWAT, like militarized troops with guns, and that's how they relate. They're just like, who is that? I don't care. Get her out of here. And they're in like very dark kind of like black kind of clothing, and she's dressed in white. And we're getting this kind of dichotomy here. Like she's exposed to the elements. She doesn't feel like she's in danger. There's like this sort of two perspectives on the situation, right?
Yeah, it's. I mean, and not just that, but like we later get this our second kind of like duality perspective of when she finds whatever she's looking for, whatever she's tracking is a life form, and it's very brightly blue, and the things that were emerging were very like warmly
There's
orange.
a lot of orange in this movie. Holy shit.
Yeah, it's basically like I would say like intro to color theory.
We do get a cool shot though of like when she's getting this like life form. The soldier's eyes are like, they have these blue like goggles, and she's got her little orange goggle. Like they're really driving home that blue orange dichotomy for sure.
Basic, first confrontation kind of happens, freaks out, you get the life form, I got it. A little bit of confrontation, but nothing really bad happens. And we kind of figure out that they're going to be going to the clearest or the closest sanctuary, which is
old New York City.
So we actually get like full on confirmation, besides just the architecture, that this is our Earth as we know it, like years in the future, dystopian.
It's really cool. I mean, it's a giant dome around like lower Manhattan. Like you see the crumbling Brooklyn Bridge. And this is the first shot I feel that kind of feels Final Fantasy to me. There's almost like a gothic quality to it with like the glass and like we find out later it's not really glass, but it looks very glassy, and I don't know, that shot, it feels very like FF9 kind of, like it's like weirdly like technological, but also like luxurious and medieval, and it's cool. It's a really cool like architecture.
When you say that, it kind of makes me think about how like Final Fantasy VIII was kind of like high fantasy in this weird sci-fi mix, and then you have Final Fantasy IX that was a little bit more closer to high fantasy with like its architecture, but it didn't shy too far away from the sci-fi, but all the hard sci-fi of that game came so much later. And so, like, it kind of makes sense that they would kind of go for this art style based on the games that were being developed at the time. So as the team makes their way into New York City, they really drive home this whole scanning scene. Like, they throw a whole bunch of, like, information at you, because you learn that, the characters are Captain Gray And then the main female lead is Aki Ross. We learned that there is some sort of like, you know, familiarity. They know of each other, or there's some sort of like.
Yeah. And like we it's revealed too that the rest of the soldiers, like, they know who she is now that they've had a chance to, like, you know, greet each other. And there's like some little animosity there. Like, she's not part of their crew, and like, you know, maybe they have a history. Like, you know, they don't trust her. They think she's like a dumb scientist or whatever. They're not cool, like a soldier.
Well, yeah, because like the scanning scene.
I've hacked this guy's body and saved his life. Eat shit.
Yeah, so okay, so like really quick, let me finish introducing the rest of the cast, and we have to talk about this scene because the scene is fucking wild. So then you have this soft male character that's voiced by Steve Buscemi. That's all like, I heard that these scanners can cause sterility. And then like while this other soldier, the strong female lead soldier is Jane, while she's kind of in there. And she's like, well, you know, like she makes kind of like this a real man kind of a shot at him, and he goes, well, I want to have kids. Like, kind of there's like this, like, you know, the will they won't they kind of a thing that they're like really kind of forcing on the audience. And then you have the other soldier, Ryan. It's just kind of like, man, I hate these scanners. Like, it's just like, I just want to be done with this shit. Like, I'm so sick and tired of hanging out with these people day in and day out. But when the captain gets in there. Because like the Aki Ross makes a point, is like, well, I can just bypass this, and he's like, nope, everybody gets scanned. He gets scanned, there's like an alert, you know, like oh no, like whatever they don't want to find, they done found it. And it turns out that there is some nasty orange snot goo
He's got the bad
inside the
juice.
captain. There's this really weird scene where, like, you know, they rush him to like this bioscan like medical table. And the doctor, Aki, jumps on in and like takes the reins, and we get to see like this like blue, this
like
blue like phantom shape of the captain kind of rise above him, and then like straight up video games just start happening. You know, it's just like it's tracking it and like she's trying to get a hold of it, and the rest of the crew's like, you're gonna lose it, and there's like a whole timer of like apparently in 1 minute this dude's just toast. Like, whatever is in him,
you know, it's 2001. We gotta have our like hacking scene. You know, it wouldn't be a good sci-fi movie if you didn't hack into like the mainframe and like just shoot lasers through the chest of like someone that, you know.
Good old hacker man.
I don't understand how this laser works either. Like, it's clearly a visible laser. Maybe the red laser is tracking, because like every time I see this scene, I'm just like, it looks like she's like fucking carving this dude up. Like, just.
Yeah, no, like it has that vibe to it, right? Because it's literally hovering over his chest, and it's like doo 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 doo, but like they're not even looking at the captain.
They found the spirits
and he's,
within,
like, wiggling like in pain, but like he was completely fine until they found the spirit in him. So she is shooting him with something.
But anyway, then she's cool. Then the military is forced to acknowledge that science is actually fucking cool.
She saves the captain, and then like. They're like, okay, you know, like we're glad that we saved you, because if we didn't save you, then you wouldn't have been able to save the captain, which is complete bullshit, because if they didn't even go out to save her ass, they would have had to have this whole, we need to save the captain.
Do we know how he got
to
exposed?
this.
Like, did any of the like spirits like touch him when they were doing the mission? I forget.
I do remember in like the first couple of scenes, while they're escaping the first like real conflict, they make an emphasis to have like this like one spirit kind of come out and like a wiggly bit get close, but not quite, or maybe not quite like make contact with them. So like, I think that what they're trying to push for is like, you know, oh no, like, well, what if he gets touched? What happens if you get touched? Because that's, you know, that we don't know that.
He caught the ugly.
Because we haven't been, you know, exposed to like what actually happens when a spirit just kind of like meanders through. So for some reason, like, you know, this is like the, you know, the you proved yourself kind of a moment. And then we have our titular Final Fantasy Sid bust on in. Dr. Sid comes on in.
Dr. Wily.
Good old Dr. Well, not enough hair. This Sid straight bald. So we get a little bit more kind of like background on what's going on. Apparently the plant that Aki picked up is the 6th Barrett. It's 6 out of 8. And
the 6th Barrett?
The what?
You're the sixth Barrett.
The sixth Barrett. Yeah, the sixth spirit out of 8.
There's no getting off this spirit we're within.
But apparently they're trying to solve a puzzle, and like they're so close to the end. We just have like 2 more spirits, and then we're done. And we just had a really weird scene before with the this little like save the captain minigame, but like even weirder.
Save the captain.
Yeah, even weirder after that moment is this weird like talk where like Dr. Sid is kind of helping Aki on like this quest to get these spirits. We don't know exactly why she needs it just yet, but also he fears that like his previous like fascinations is going to cause her to lose favor with humanity, and they'll kind of ostracize her the way that his previous research did. So he gives her like this little like warning kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And hands her,
as we all know, anytime anyone teaches anything, like gives a lecture, they're basically just saying to the audience, these are the themes of the movie. This is what the movie is about. Pay attention.
Yeah, it's kind of like spoon feeding the plot to you, or like the struggles. Mm-hmm. And it's where this movie like has a lot of like fallbacks, because like you don't let the world kind of naturally develop.
Yeah.
And you instead like you kind of have to tell people what's kind of going on.
They're squeezing the story in like in between all these extremely tropey like generic scenes, right? Like, oh, I'm scoping out like a hostile air territory, and then I'm dealing with like the toxic masculinity of like a military shooter, and then like, oh, there's this like mentor-mentee thing, and it's like, meanwhile, here's all this Gaia theory, like all this stuff that we're talking about, and like what's going on here? They're just cramming it all in.
Yeah, it's so weird. So like I really have to like unpack this diary, because like literally like they hammer in like the major themes of this movie. So I'm gonna read a direct quote from it. So this is verbatim Sid's research. It goes, all life is born of Gaia, and each life has a spirit. Each new spirit is housed in a physical body. Through their experiences on Earth, each spirit matures and grows. When the physical body dies, the mature spirit, enriched by its life on Earth, returns to Gaia, bringing with it experiences enabling Gaia to live and grow. This is verbatim Gaia theory.
Like the actual Gaia theory, like in real life.
Yeah, which is rooted loosely in the fact that the planet is alive, as are we, and every time that new beings are born, they enrich the planet by living out their own individual lives, and then when they die, they return back into the planet so that way the planet grows along with its inhabitants.
Yeah, and I mean it is very metaphysical and spiritual, but there actually there is like a lot of overlap with the concept of the biosphere in like ecology, like the idea of there's like these nested tiers of ecologies, right? You have your like local biome, and then you have the like regional biome, and you have your like if you're in like a desert or you're on like a continent, right? But ultimately the last one is the sphere of the earth itself. That is like the final ecosystem. And in ecology, that like everything is like nested organisms, right? Like your body is thousands of colonies of cells and bacteria that are alive, and the sum total of that is like a person who is alive in its own way. And so like just like a family is like a living organism, and a city is a living organism, like the planet itself in that way, right, is very much a living thing that's comprised of lots of little cells, right? So it's like really cool. It's like actually like a really, really cool theory, and it's a good way to relate to like the planet. And I mean, we also shouldn't neglect the fact that Final Fantasy VII, that plot is also very much tied into Gaia theory. Like Bugenhagen's whole thing about the life stream, that's Gaia theory, right? Exactly what Sid was describing is like how the life stream works in Final Fantasy VII.
Can't get away from it. That game's everywhere.
I told you this is a Final Fantasy VII spinoff. This is the good one.
This is what happens when the meteor hits. The meteor.
This is what happens when they fail.
Spirits.
It's
from
like
another...
it's like Zelda, you know, like there's one fork in the timeline when Link is defeated by Ganon. Yeah, this is the one where Cloud and the gang
split
fail.
Timeline. I hate it now. You want to talk about confusing timelines? The arbitrarily drawn together
yeah, bro. Let's go.
Legend of Zelda timeline. There you go.
That'll be our next pirate stream. No more Final Fantasy, only Zelda. Every Zelda and Zelda.
Every Master Sword pulled, forged, and
The Legend of Zelda
repowered.
7 Final Fantasy of Time.
No, Breath of the Life stream.
Okay, let's get back to the movie.
So we get introduced to our general antagonist, General Hein, voiced by freaking James Woods of all people. So out of everybody here, like, there's a lot of really good actors and actresses that are part of this movie. I mean, we have an A-list crew, but James Woods in his portrayal of General Hein just seems like he's having the most fun in the booth. Like,
Oh yeah, for sure.
there's a certain amount of like energy that you can feel from it where like, you know, like the actor, like Robin Williams was very famous for this. Like when he was doing like a character, you're like, oh man, like he's losing his shit in that booth, like just like going mad, paper flying, like like you can, it's like you get this whole like image in your head of like what this actor's doing to like get these sounds and like to get their voice to do certain things and like just really pour that energy in.
Yeah, I mean, also there's a scene here. I don't remember if it's the beginning of like the like conference room scene where where we're seeing this character for the first time, but like they literally show like a projection that's like half orange and half blue, and like the orange is over the military guy and the blue is over the scientist, and it's like you were saying before, like color theory for babies. It's just like, okay, I get it, movie, thank you.
Yeah. I believe like the hologram that they're kind of showing off is like the reactor, like not the reactor, but the meteor impact crater. So it's like you have like this big blue thing, and then you have like this like alien looking like orange thing that just kind of like in the center of it. And they're kind of discussing about like, this is the source where the spirits are coming from. We know what it is. We have the technology. Why don't we just use it? So General Hein is like
more like General
like,
Heine. Got him.
So General Hein is like, like, I don't understand why you guys are not letting me utilize like my powerful super weapon Zeus.
Why won't you guys let me fire my enormous weapon?
Yeah, come on. Like, we know the crater. Like, I have this big cannon in space, and we just shoot my laser.
Military violence has solved all of our problems up until this point, and it will continue to solve all of our problems into the future.
Oh yeah, well, what could go wrong? If everything is always going pew pew and things are disappearing, then it's out
like
of sight,
the
out of
SpongeBob
mind.
blank. Why don't we take Bikini Bottom and push it somewhere else? But the military is just like, why don't we just take a big gun and shoot it until it's dead?
Just beat it into submission. What's wrong with making things the way that I want them to be?
You got a problem? Use gun. And if that don't solve it, use more gun.
Working for Vincent.
Who?
Who? So immediately Aki has and Sid have like, opposition to this. They kind of get in like this little like this tiff back and forth where it's just like, how are we going to stop the spirits? And it's like, well, I'm working on something. Well, what are you working on? And like there's this weird like kind of like back and forth of each character kind of like withholding information, trying to wait for the other one to show their cards. And Aki takes the bait and just like,
you fool!
pushes a couple of buttons on like her forearm, and all of a sudden like this little projection comes out, and she's like, because it's inside me.
Okay,
and, like everybody in the council is like, oh fuck.
We got to talk about what's happening here, because it's like a pretty potent scene. There's a lot of like overlapping metaphor, right? Like one more color duality of like black and white, right? Like the military, like General Hein's complete black, all leather, and the two scientists are in all white, right? And then you have like the council, they're kind of wearing these like varying shades of gray, right? So, okay, it's like they're growing real hard. This was when I really picked up on the color duality thing, not just the blue and orange, right? But the black and white thing. But like also, right, now they've introduced this like metaphor of pregnancy, you know, oh, it's in me, I'm carrying it, right?
Yeah, I'm carrying this contingent. And like, it's when we learn like why Aki is doing the things that she's doing, because she doesn't have a lot of time left. This thing that's inside of her, it's slowly killing her. So that's her main drive. Her main drive to find all these spirits is to try to get herself cured, or at least that's the hypothesis that they have. You know, complete this partial spirit inside of me, and then I will be free. I will be made whole again, kind of a deal. So, obviously that freaks everybody else out. There's a little bit of like, you know, divergence.
You can trust me because I'm infected by an alien.
Yeah, and like, you know, of course, like the military is going to be freaked out about this, and of course everybody in the council, like, you basically brought somebody who's infected with like this really dangerous thing that like has the power to kill pretty willy-nilly, and it's inside where the heart of the city and the highest military official is for the city. So like, understandably that they would be freaked out, but to the level that General Hein kind of takes it, there's this whole like malicious ploy to it. So fast forwarding from that scene, there's once again another awkward ass scene. We definitely needed this to build the
stakes, right, and who's the characters and stuff.
Well, yes, but I mean, this is the elevator scene, the good old elevator of lore.
Before we get to the elevator scene, there's this neat transition shot where we see a Manhattan henge, and for like people who don't know what that is, right? It's like when the setting sun or the rising sun lines up with like the street grid in Manhattan, and you get this like corridor that's really cool. But then the camera pans up, and we're basically in Midgar. Like there's like a plate overhead, and it's like it's all because of that damn pizza, you know? They're killing the planet, Cloud. All for a goddamn JPEG.
Yeah. Oh God.
Okay, elevator scene.
The times we live in.
Sorry.
Yeah, so sorry, not to talk about dystopian worlds.
Couldn't be me. Wouldn't know what that's like.
Couldn't wasn't me.
Someone was talking recently about like which Final Fantasy world would you want to live in, and I was like, I mean, I already live in 7.
Oh yeah,
I already live in that one.
Yeah. I think it's not as bad as 6 gets though. God, so getting from that amazing transition to a ridiculous convoluted scene that's trying to be too many things at once, but does a really good job of like actually kind of like pulling you in a little bit. I believe at some point you actually did like you had like some sort of connection with like the characters and the story of it.
Yeah, we have an actual human moment in this movie for the first time.
Yeah, and it's only like, you know, 20 minutes in. But the weird thing about it is like you were like, you know, I'm with it emotionally. Like if I were watching this movie with my eyes closed, I would connect with it. But the problem with it is like the animations are not quite up to par.
Yeah.
So like the graphics are great, but the rigging, I believe it's called, the rigging and like the paths that the characters take, it's almost inhuman. Like Uncanny Valley was the term that you gave.
Yeah, Uncanny Valley. I mean, that's exactly what it is. The whole idea of the Uncanny Valley is that as you approach verisimilitude, like as you approach, you know, an actual reproduction of real life, the mind becomes increasingly uncomfortable with it until a certain threshold is crossed and it's like believed to be real. So like a cartoon is so far from reality that like your brain doesn't have a problem with it. But this movie is precisely at the nadir of that valley. It's like just real enough that everything irks you when you're looking at these characters, especially a romantic scene like this where they're like, will they, won't they? And like, oh, we're having a cute, like intense personal conversation. And like, you're seeing these faces and they just look like robotic in a way. Like, it's so hard to describe, but you said stiff, right? Like, I totally agree. The way they walk around, the way they move is very like, I move here now. And then I nod my head in agreement. And then I shrug. And like, it's just like, okay.
Yeah, to use an animator's term, it's like motion tween.
Ooh.
With like a little bit of like animated effects in it. It's just like, at this point in time, character move from point A to point B. Character 2 goes from point B to point C. They interlock hands.
Well, and it's funny too because it's not like a cheap animation. It's not like, some stuff that you see what people do with Source Forge Maker or whatever it's called. Like, it's really well done. It's fine. The problem is that it's like, it looks like bad acting, like it looks like someone who's bad at acting.
It looks like, like House of the Dead, where it's just like, no signal. Yeah, because there's no cell towers, dummy. And you're like, was that line really delivered that way? Like they didn't think to themselves, you know what? Let's run it back. Let's get a couple more takes, and then we'll just take the best take in editing. Aki and the captain, Gray, get inside this like lift.
Oh, they get inside.
Oh, they not quite yet. Soon. We'll get there. Well, what is a Final Fantasy?
They're inside spiritually.
Yeah. What is a Final Fantasy game and or movie if there is not a sex scene eventually? So
Sticky Dane.
I love that lake. So they're up in the lift, and then like one of like the Captain Gray's like lackeys, like one of his soldiers is like trying to like forcefully mess with the lift to like stop it, so that way like they have some personal time, I guess, against like watchful ears. Perhaps they don't put recording devices or cameras in here, that way they can like talk about what's going on with Aki, talk about like this whole plan with General Hein, and then we finally get a little bit of backstory on the spirits that she got. The first one was herself, the second one was a fish, third one was a deer, the fourth one was a sparrow, the fifth one was a little girl. And you're like, okay, I get it, these are all like animals in some way. Yep. And then the sixth one, plant. The scene that we saw them kind of get in on, and we're like, okay, well, like she's kind of going through all this, and this is like where you have the emotional connection of it, because the actress does a really good job of like portraying like the emotion behind it, and like the way that Aki's feelings and the way that she has like this connection with these different dreams. The more spirits that she gets, the more of these dreams we get to kind of like live through and experience. The idea is, when we get all 8 spirits, we'll have a full understanding of what's kind of going on.
Right.
Did you have anything else to add on, like this elevator scene, before we move on to the next couple of steps? Well,
it's very funny. It's very high school kind of setup, right? Like he's got his bros on the the crew, like who are it's like the back.
Yeah, you put the chair at the door, and like nobody can escape, so like they have to sit there and listen to like Becky, like, I know I messed up, but like I could be different.
It's just very cute.
Okay.
It also strikes me a little bit like the like date that you go on in Gold Saucer in FF7, like the kind of like being in a little booth together, and you can't really you have to like you can't keep avoiding that there's like this sexual tension, or like there's something that you need to get off your chest, and like, but also like it's really not a great time. Like he set this up to kind of be like, okay, I'm gonna get romantic, and she's like going through some trauma, right? Like she's like not really in a romantic mood.
Yeah, she's literally dying. She's on a mission so that way she doesn't die, and then she's plagued by not only now being ostracized because she literally told the people in charge of the city that she's infected with this spirit, and if she doesn't get all of these spirits, she's going to die. But I mean, at the same time,
she's under a lot of pressure, and it's good. Like he does kind of get through to her, and they have a real like they have a real moment where she opens up, and like they have a connection. And right when he's about to like go in and like give her a kiss, and she's like she's vibing, she's into it, the fucking crew turns the elevator back on. Like, you fools, like what the fuck? Did they not set up like a signal or something so that like it's just like no, like the entire point of this plan, you fucked it up.
Yeah, it's like that halfway plan where it's just like, all right, you know what? I bet you I can get through to her in like 5 minutes. Like and like literally, yeah, and then literally like his soldier is like, all right, you got 5 minutes, and you're like, and he's 5 minutes to a T. Like looking at his watch, 4:58, 4:59. All right, let's back on, and then, like it just completely like sucks all of the the tension out of it. It sucks the viewer out of it, and you're just kind of like, what even was that? Like, you're kind of left there with like the same
becomes
feeling
this
of,
like
of, like the
exposition
captain.
scene. You're just like, ugh, okay, fine. I mean, no, there's progress, right? Like now they've expressed their feelings to each other, and the fact that they almost went for a kiss, that's something like that. It means that like they're both romantically interested in each other, and like. But I imagine there's also this extra scene that we don't get to see where he like stomps back into the barracks. It's like, what the fuck? Like, it's just so mad.
I want that cut. I want that deleted scene where he's just like, bro, like you didn't wait. Like I thought we talked about this.
I said I would caw like a dove.
And you're like,
doves don't caw. I told you that.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, what is that? You're trying to tell somebody about a bird and like maybe they've never even experienced bird, because like what is this? They were decimated for 30 years. So these people are probably in their 30s. The world was probably in ruins and their parents were probably fleeing from this when they were born. So it's like they may not even know birds or what birds sound like. I'm thinking about all this stuff right now on the spot. I'm like, I don't want to think about
I don't want to think more
like
about this
what
movie.
the world of this is, and who knows what animals exist or not. There's really nothing wrong with the movie. It's just that when you start thinking about like more like the how does the rest of the ecosystem go out, and like and then you have like Aki talking about like these different animals, like a fish, a deer, a sparrow, and
those
like
are things.
the captain's just like
I know some of these words.
Things. Yeah, might have all just be talking about people's like freaking like spirit animals. But
spirit animals within.
So
Yes.
this is the entire world that we have built up for us, right? We know that we're on Earth. We know that the whatever the spirits are, they came from this crater that landed in
That doesn't have any
Africa.
significance.
No, not at all. We know that Aki is driven to get the rest of these spirits because she's on a countdown, basically. We know why she gets these dreams. Or we don't know why she gets these dreams, but we know that the amount of context we get of these dreams is based on how many different spirits she gets. She makes a point to say, these dreams are getting longer. I'm seeing more of it. Like I'm feeling more of it. And we get some more of that in like the third and fourth dream kind of coming up. So I'd say they did a pretty good job, at least with the pacing, building the world up. It's not held together the way that I would want, but I like the fact that they give enough suspension of disbelief so that way you can be left to think, okay, well, maybe the spirits are really only after humans. So when she's talking about all these animals, probably there's some sort of like, maybe the animals are not getting hurt.
Yeah, and also like what does that mean? You know what I mean? Like if animals are surviving and humans aren't, that's like very interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about the Gaia theory, like, maybe humans are more the focus of the Gaia theory because we learn and grow not just in size, but also intelligence.
Yeah.
So maybe, so, I mean, they always say knowledge is power. Maybe it's literal when, like, compared to, like, the Gaia theory. Maybe, like, literally the more that you know, the more powerful you're, more enriched, to use the terminology in this in this movie, more enriched you are when you go back into
cut to an extremely noir scene.
Oh, I love this scene. You want to talk about this one?
Yeah, I mean, so we get into like this meeting between General Hines and like Dr. Ross and like, or not Dr. Ross, but these military officials. They're kind of talking about their reactions of what Aki revealed in this meeting. And how you have the shot of like James Woods, which I'm going to refer to him exclusively as James Woods now, just like gazing thoughtfully out the window, extremely, mysteriously, and then realizing that he can kind of use this maybe to his advantage, and starts manipulating his men to be like, we can't trust her, and she's like a spy, and like she's doing all of this, like she's like undermining our activities here, and she could be a threat, Yeah, basically using Aki and her situation to fuel his ends, which is to get approval to fire this massive cannon into the crater. What could be better than this? Guys being dudes, Boys will be boys.
Hey,
he just wants to blast.
1 second, it's just... Yeah, in 1 second you're just hitting each other with sticks, and the next second you're blowing up entire continents. You know what's
Our big boy.
what's to be
our
wrong
big
with
boy
that?
just wants to blast. Why can't they let him? Why can't they let him come?
They're not gonna let him. They've been blue balling him for years apparently. And when you get to look at the ship, you're just like, come on. Like there's definitely like a lot of this stuff.
There's
like,
a lot in this
little bit
movie
ahead,
where you
but, like,
see it and you just go, come on. Fuck you.
Yeah, there's a lot of it where like there's a lot of like it's not sexual tension, it's just like
it's a giant sign in the
sexual
sky that says
referencing.
this is sex in giant like Arial font.
Yeah. Sans serif. Yeah. So yeah, we get General Noir. It's a really good scene. It's basically like, you know, it's got him and like his trusted officials, like I guess like his lieutenant, or no, his major. That's what it is. It's his major and his major's lieutenant that are, you know, kind of like in there, and he's like, well, we can't trust her, so we obviously can't trust the captain because the captain's in league with her. So watch over the captain, and if he does anything, you know,
you do what we always do.
So, oh yeah, shoot him. They are they out of line? Shoot him. Hate it. So
then a giant muscle falls from the sky.
Full muscle gripping a beer, you know, America's finest Budweiser, just gripping it. You got some nice tattoos, the good old mom heart with the arrow through it, a nice barbed wire tribal tattoo, and you know, some good old butt rock, you know, just kind of playing on like the boombox that is also being held in the same hand because the grip is just that strong.
But no, for real.
It gets the beer,
like,
it gets the boombox.
A gigantic muscle, like shellfish muscle shaped ship crashes onto like a rocky outcrop and then starts giving birth to bionicles. That's the next thing that happens.
It's right back at Legos, baby. So the next scene, couple of scenes that we have there. There's nothing really interesting about it. Like, probably the highlights about it that we have is just there's like really massive spirits out there.
I'm sorry,
like,
there's nothing interesting about it? Are you forgetting that there's an army of Bionicles shooting missiles that don't hit their targets and like running at Aki in her dream?
Oh yeah, the third dream. Sorry. I was getting a little ahead of myself to like the actual mission. No. Okay, so yeah, so she goes right back into the next dream state, right?
Right.
And then like there's like this big old seed. And like she kind of turns over and like the Chozo or the precursors from Jak and Daxter or the Bionicles are kind of like staring at her. And then there's like a whole just like rain of fire that just kind of blows up, and like the things just kind of like look back at it, look at Aki, and just like accept their fate.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
and she kind of wakes
there's
up.
this moment too where one of them passes through her, like it becomes transparent, and then it's superimposed over her face, and then she like clutches her chest and falls through like them. Like there's like this very enigmatic kind of moment where there's like, you know, she's identifying with them maybe or something, like, and she even says like, I don't understand what they're trying to tell me, but I'm getting more and more messages.
Yeah. Like all we can get is that there's some sort of war, right? Like there's just some sort of like this side versus that side, but it's very like same planety. Like they're whatever they're disagreeing about, it's like literally one faction or two factions of the same race going at it.
Crucially,
it's
right?
A big
it's
civil war,
it's
but
like you're right. It's two of the same species fighting each other.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean anything.
Thank you for reminding me. Would have skipped right over that dream because that's actually really important. But yeah, so after that one, they're on like this flight mission because they identified where the seventh spirit is. You get this cool like, you know, Jurassic Park scene where they're like kind of flying over, I think it's like the Arizona desert.
The wasteland
Take
of
your hat off
Tucson,
and stare.
unchanged from how it looks today.
Yeah, oddly enough, not destroyed. Just, you know,
just still a wasteland.
there wasn't much there to begin with. Sorry, Arizona. But yeah, they kind of, I think there's a couple of comments based on it. I didn't write any notes on it, but like I'm starting to remember now, like they have a couple of comments on it, like, why are there like gigantic phantoms? And then, but like we always like are under siege by like these weird Cthulhuan, like Mars Attacks phantoms.
Yeah.
But fast forwarding through it, they identify where the life form is, and apparently it's in an ovo pack. And this is once again, it's not an organic thing, but it is an organic thing. It's weird. Yeah. So apparently ovo packs, they power weapons, and that's what charges and keeps the barrier cities kind of in there. And they're used to like the ovo packs are created by living tissue. No idea what living tissue it is, because they never go into it, but they just kind of drop that whole bomb on you that it's just like, yeah, it's an ovo pack and it's living tissue.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of confusing in general how the technology works. I know we hear later in the movie also that the shield around, New York is also made of the same kind of energy. It's very I don't know, it almost feels like improvised. Like they're just like, yeah, and this is the life energy, and this is the life energy. Just roll with it. We're asked to like suspend a lot of disbelief, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So right after they collect this seventh spirit that's in the ovo pack, immediately they are under siege by the spirits. I'm trying to remember if that was something that General Hein orchestrated, or if it was the ovo pack that caused the spirits to come on in and attack our heroes. There was a bit of I think there was some infighting after they get back on like the ship. And there's this whole like, really like tight window where the pilot has to kind of get in there, get the people, get on out. And what was it? I think one of the soldiers that Hein put on the ship and stuff like that is like, well, she's coming with us now. Like,
like Hein has his agent on that team, right? And he's kind of got two missions.
Yeah, because like what I think Aki collapses, right? I think she collapses, and then like she's progressing further and stuff like that. It's like getting into close to her actually dying, and I think they're afraid of like the spirit kind of coming out of her.
Yeah, I think Hein kind of gave him instructions, if she tries anything, you take care of her. And so when she acts like strangely, he's like, okay, that's it. Like, I'm taking her in, like looking almost for any excuse, right?
Yeah. And we get to see one of like the first things that happens, right? With like when the spirit touches or passes through like any of the soldiers, it just immediately pulls their blue spirit away from them. And then they just kind of collapse lifelessly. Yeah. And one of them gets hit by it, and then the other one randomly gets picked up, like almost conveniently, while they're like at like this height of like the soldier has them on the ropes, like he's gonna shoot them. It's all over for our heroes, and all of a sudden just woof.
Yeah, it's a little Deus Ex Machina, but it's interesting also how there's like a predator prey thing. We always see ourselves as like the top of the food chain, but this is a situation where it's like, just touching any of these monsters, you're just dead, and the petty squabbles among the humans almost seems like, silly when they're in such mortal danger, like the fact that it can pass through walls, like this guy has them at gunpoint, and then this thing just like, woof, it's just over,
They're at wit's ends, and then in this world that's like close to humanity being on annihilation, the fact that they're being so protective over anything that could potentially wipe out like themselves and their way of life, like they're taking a huge risk on letting Aki continue her research. And you get into this unfortunate circumstance where it's like the fear of survival, and then the control over a militaristic presence that is obviously feeling more masculine. So I don't think there's any projections going on, but there is definitely that feeling.
I mean, they're obviously playing with gender roles here too. They're one of the crew members in the first scene is like a rough and tough woman, and she's like, acting like one of the guys. And so they're exploring the space between men and women for sure, right? And power and those kinds of dynamics.
Yeah, and they even demonize or not demonize, but they tease the more like nerdy kind of pilot guy that's like the mechanic, because he's a little bit softer. Yeah. So yeah, I can see that. So the mission's over. They need to get her back to back to like a med bay. They gotta get her back up and going. What's weird though is like, isn't there a barrier city? Didn't they say there's a barrier city in like Tucson? So why do they need to go all the way back to New York?
Yeah, I mean,
like that's the
because that's where our story is, Ninnyz. That's where all the people are. Yeah. I want to see the Final Fantasy the Spirits Within spinoff that takes place in Tucson. The Spirits Without.
Yeah, it's just like, people living day in and day out, and every once in a while they're just like, there's that weird shit
just
again.
Fucking Mad Max.
Guess they're doing nothing. Oh no, they're some peaceful movie where like nothing really bad happens except for one scene, but that's that one scene from another movie where all the bad things are happening and all the action is happening.
It would be very funny.
You just get to see it from some weird...
It'd be very funny if like all this bad stuff is just happening to the New York crew and everyone else is just vibing. They're just having a great time.
Nothing bad ever happens in Tucson. So we get back into...
Well, wait, but there's a moment that happens on that ship, right? Like Aki has a dream again.
Yeah, we covered that, right? Because
she has a dream like while she's knocked out on the ship, and it shows like the planet exploding, and like a big bomb going on.
That's right. She has the massive epiphany, right? So, to explain the dream a little bit, she has a lot of the same reflective properties of it, but the color of it was different, right? This is the one that's more grayish.
Yeah,
'cause I remember there's one of the dreams. I can't remember if it's this one or no. I know what one it is. It's the later one when the captain comes, but I'm getting a little bit too ahead of myself. So this dream was still orange.
But it is like dark. It's like there's cloud cover and all the armies are kind of frozen in place. They're not really moving. It's very like gloomy. And then there's a big flash of blue and then red. Yeah, so there's that huge flash, and then like there's that one was more of the shorter dream, right? Yeah. It's not the next one, not the one coming up. Okay, it shows like a big, massive explosion, almost like a mushroom cloud, and then this like ring of fire just consumes everything and just obliterates all the armies.
Gotcha. Yeah, I wasn't sure which one because I think this is where my notes kind of got a little bit muddied up on certain things.
Well, I mean, to be fair, like there's so many dreams in this movie, and they're all like almost identical. They really want you to remember these dreams. But the critical thing, right, is that she's scared by the dream because the whole planet gets burnt up, and she startles out of her slumber and like scares the guy with the gun. And he shoots her.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's how she ends up so injured.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, so that's why they need to go back home really quickly.
Right. Yeah, maybe we could say like I don't know.
I'm starting to remember this movie. I was trying to forget.
I mean, maybe like Tucson, they don't have the right medical equipment or whatever. They need more ovo packs or some shit.
You're right. Yeah, Tucson can't spare ovo packs with the East Coast. It's strictly a West Coast, Midwest kind of a deal.
Yeah, the West and East Coast rivalries never die, even after the apocalypse. Yeah, even after the apocalypse, the East Coast West Coast rivalry never dies.
It's just like the whole AM PM rivalry with like any retail or cooking job. It's just always like the day crew, the night crew, the front of house, back of house, everybody. There has to be sides. I think now we get rushed back to New York super quick. As soon as the ship lands, I think they're pretty much detained by General Hine and his cronies. I believe they take her to... they take her and the captain to medical, and then they take the rest of the crew to jail.
Yeah, Hines takes like advantage of the situation.
Oh, absolutely. He's been looking for this situation the entire time, right? He's been looking for a reason to let them like you know, because he found the dream. He was like, this is it. This is our evidence. This is how I bring this to the council, and they'll let me fire my Zeus cannon.
And then I think that there's this moment in the hospital bay where Sid is explaining to the captain, you know, that she's dying, and he says that she needs a sympathetic spirit to tie her to this world. And I thought that was like very important kind of comment, right? There's something about this like kinship and this connection to other like living things that is the thing that's going to keep her, you know, in the world of the living.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like a spiritual anchor kind of a deal. Like gives her something to keep fighting for.
Well, especially he calls it a sympathetic spirit, and I think like the ideas of sympathy and antipathy, you know, are very clearly delineated in this movie, right? You have Hines, who sees everyone as a threat and everyone as like a tool to be used, and then you have Aki, who is like trying to reach out to these other life forms and try to understand what's happening, and you know, she's sympathetic towards the monsters.
Yeah, to a fault. She's still afraid of them, and she's like fearful of it, but like since the spirit is inside her, she feels compelled to go through with this mission.
Right. But that's what leads us to the next dream.
Yeah, so we get this kind of like interesting scene that's kind of like Inception in a way, is the only way that I can really kind of like plant that idea into your head in like an audio medium. And so like they both kind of lay down on these chairs these little beds, and Aki is already out because she's unconscious because she got shot. And then the captain kind of gets like dosed and then enters her dream, and this is when
I will also say I love color. They have the bed like slide over closer to her, and it's like the classic like Oscar bait blood transfusion scene, and it's like, dude, you're just going to sleep, like you don't need to like be lying immediately next to her. But but then you're right, like he's in her dream, right?
Yeah, it's like one of those things. It's like the 1950s like to 1960s like slamming the two beds together, kind of a
vibe. two twin beds.
Baby, we're gonna make ourselves another Junior.
Oh, God. Yeah, but crucially, the most important thing in this dream is it's blue. It's not orange. We got something different.
Yeah,
and we got moon. We got big moon. So you know this is now part of the it's part of the Dirge of Cerberus extended universe.
Oh yeah, and the Bloodborne extended universe. You know, all the moon love.
Yeah, Aki has extremely high insight stat.
It's the highest. I mean, that's why she can see all these Cthulhu things. It all makes sense. You know, you got a couple of umbilical cords inside of you. You get a little insight, and then before you know it, you're just starting to see all these spirits around us. The really important thing about this is that like he's like inside of her dream, but like she's like, oh look, you came, like hey, this is kind of like what I've been experiencing, and like he's kind of taken aback by it, like
what is this Abe's Odyssey
like
shit?
Oh shit, like yeah. And so like, you know, all the things are once again not moving. It's like a gosh, like what's the best way I can kind of describe it is like they play through the last couple of aspects of the third and fourth dream that we saw, but we see it from like the outside, the big picture of it. It blows the whole planet up, and it launches this like meteor like shaped thing, and like it starts flying outwards in space. And we don't get to see where that goes, but by the time that like Aki and the captain like reawaken, they both have that same epiphany, like, I know what the phantoms are, like I know where they come from. And basically that whole dream sequence was just the history of what happened between these aliens on their home planet. Their spirits, their energies, their rage and all that stuff was somehow carried through space on this meteor as like a vessel. Somehow a massive amount of like spirits and like life forms and stuff like that, when it crashed onto our planet, they were able to like emerge. And then over the course of 30 years, I don't know if they were like feeding off of the human energy.
I mean, yeah, at the very least, you know, it's a very symbolically potent moment, right? It's this planet that ostensibly was consumed by war, and the war among the same species, right, led to this explosion that destroyed everything, and it sent off this like shrapnel that hit our planet. And now that rage is rippling out into our world and fucking everything up here. You know, it's like this cycle of rage or of violence or whatever. And crucially, in the middle of this dream sequence, we have like a kind of cutaway to Hein, General Heine. And there's a scene that's not subtle where he's holding up a leaf and he just crushes it in his fist and walks over to a computer monitor. I was just like, man, this movie is like... It's a bit on the nose sometimes.
Yeah, here's your symbolism right in your face.
Yeah.
So General Hein, while this is going, he's trying to he's not trying to, he is plotting a coup of sorts,
Yeah.
right? So he's talking to his major and like his men. He's like, look, I've lost people, you've lost people, you believe in me and the actions that I'm doing, you believe that I'm doing things in like the best interest of the humans, right?
And he swirls a very
like, well,
strange looking glass of whiskey that does not look like liquid. It's like some fucking GTA San Andreas shit.
But yeah, so like, you know, General Hein has like this whole idea of like, if the council won't listen to me, I'm going to show them, like, I'm going to essentially cause something to happen where they have no choice but to give me what I need, right? So
Yeah.
that all that's happening at the same time that we get that whole revelation of like, you know, here's the spirits, here's where they come from, this is what happened to them, and then you have General Hein setting in motion the third act of this whole 4-act like I'd say structure for this movie. Do you have anything else to point out that I may have missed in just like the first half of this movie?
The kind of culmination of this scene, right? There's a scene, I don't know if we're going to get to it later, but where Hein is kind of revealing a little bit of his backstory. He's kind of...
Yeah, that's that scene too.
Yeah, he's, you know, looking at this photo and explaining that the Phantoms killed his family. And he, you know, he's trying to reach out to his commander and have like a human moment, but it comes off as like just very strange because he's like, you know, I try to imagine what it must feel like seeing everyone around you fall over dead with no apparent reason. And he's like, and he says at the end, feeling something next to you, invisible, touching you. And he's like touching the photograph. And this general is just very uncomfortable. It's just, he's just reaching inside your body. And there's like this general who's like averting his gaze, and there's all these soldiers behind him, and everyone is super uncomfortable. And he's like, anyway, that's why I need to coup. I need to do a big coup. And you guys got to do what I tell you. And they're like, yes, sir.
And basically the villain just like, yes, this is
definitely the guy that we want in charge of our entire government. Very stable genius.
Thankfully we don't. Yeah, thankfully we don't have anybody like that, or had anybody like that.
Yeah, the problem with this movie is it's so unbelievable. You know, nothing in this movie has any like bearing on the real world, and I can't relate to it.
Yeah, I can't imagine what General Hein would be on social media.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as the close of the second act, like, you know, they've kind of set up the stakes and they've set up the kind of core themes here, right? We're exploring this kind of duality of like masculinity and femininity, of like violence, and of antipathy and empathy, and like life and death, and aliens and terrestrials. Like they're really into this idea of others, us and the other, and you know, this trying to bridge this chasm between like, you know, the like yawning void between us.
All right, so now we get into third act, which is, it's weird because this movie has like two moments of like climax in a way, right? Like the plot points of the battle, and then like the plot points of the spirit and the Gaia theory kind of come together in two separate moments. So the first one is, you know, General Hein decides to take control of the barrier, right? So his whole plan is that he's going to go to one of the like the heart of it,
right,
where the barrier is like powered and the people that run it. He goes in there, basically coups,
he does a
takes
big coup.
everybody out of there. Doesn't kill nobody, notably, just kind of like, yeah, and he just kind of kicks everybody else out. and then is like, all right, cool. So we're just gonna open up like one small like aspect of the barrier.
Yeah, we're just gonna vibe. We're just gonna vibe a little. You know,
no big deal, man.
We're gonna let the right one in.
Yeah, we're gonna let these spirits through the little pipes, and then we're gonna take care of it, and then we're gonna be like the barrier city. Like the barriers are falling down. We need to do something else fast before like it all goes wrong. Is his whole
we need
grand
more gun.
idea?
Our gun didn't work. We need more gun.
Yeah, our big gun needed, small gun not enough. But the real issue that he's not even thinking about in this, because like we've seen this happen multiple times before, the spirits, the only thing that stops them is that barrier, right? And as soon as they have access through the barrier, like they could just fucking go wherever.
Yeah,
like they're not gonna like his idea is like they're gonna go inside here, then they're gonna be perfectly funneled, and then we're gonna have like complete control over this. But almost immediately and hilariously, this blows up in his face.
Oh no, my hubris!
I know. So as soon as one kind of comes in, he goes, "Well, yeah, they're like multiple spirits detected in the tubes," and he's like, "Well, no shit, like that's the plan." And he goes, "No, sir, like they're everywhere," and he goes, "What?" it's that whole like it's so hilarious how fast this just goes ass up.
It's just like
it's like 2 seconds of his like the 2 seconds of like this is all going according to plan, and then oh no, plan goes wrong.
Arrested Development Job, I've made a huge mistake. It's just like watches all of his crew just get eaten by a dragon.
Well, imagine like fucking General Hines standing at a beach trying to throw an envelope into the ocean. But yeah, so this
mistakes
is whole,
were made.
Yeah, so now what we have essentially is a war on our own home turf. So spirits are going haywire. They're killing all of his team members. Like he lost his major, he lost all the other soldiers that are loyal to him, and he's like, well, this is how I kind of die. But then it cuts to our friends in jail cells.
Laser cell.
Yeah, super weird tone, right? Like, if this was up to me, these two scenes would have been broken up, right? It would have been him unleashing, or letting some of them in, then you do, the prison thing, and then you have an alarm go off, and then you go back to his plan blowing up in his face. It's just, the pacing of these two scenes makes no sense to me sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, they do, they open this scene... They open it originally with them in the prison cell, but they don't really say much. And there's this climax of this explosion. It seems like the whole base is going up, and then they're just like, "So, what are you guys up to?" the laser. First of all, when we watched this, I was like, "Do they have to be laser cells? Like, whatever happened to iron bars? That's not so hard." And then you're like. You're like, it's not futuristic. And then of course a power goes out and the fucking bars fail. And it's like, that's why you use iron bars. It's like people just get out immediately.
It's science. How could science go wrong? Science is powering all of our cities. Oh no, it's no longer powering our cities.
But anyway, then we're in survival horror. It's the attack of the Martians, and they run in.
Oh yeah. So this is all the good battle scenes that you want to see in kind of like a
and
sci-fi
it's very
movie, right?
it's very FF7
cars
it's
that
very
are
reactor and Shinra Tower kind of stuff all combined. It feels like to me at least.
Yeah. So there's a couple of points couple of plot points to touch on in this, but realistically, what you're getting in this is just imagine your usual alien attacking, people running, utilizing a couple of different vehicles. Your titular oh no, we can't get out with our ship because there's something that's keeping it from it, so we have to divide the party up multiple times and have them do different things. It's kind
really
of a mess how it all kind of goes. So yeah, so the first plan is to get everybody together. So they all regroup. And they go, well, what's happening? We're under attack. We have to get out of here. So they manage to get a skiff that has a big ass.
They get
gun
saved
on it.
by big car.
And then at that point, it's
Let's
battle
go.
cars. Yeah. Yeah, so
But
they're
it
driving, they're
does drop
shooting,
down into
it's all
some kind of
exciting.
like trench with what could be described as rails. So I'm gonna go with this being a rail car. I'm just gonna go ahead and throw that out there, like a people mover, maybe a rubber tire one. I refuse to acknowledge this as a car.
So you're thinking this is like more public transit with little.
I just want to know what the circulation plan in this building is. Like, there's this big, wide open, like flat space that I guess they use for like getting around. But then there's this trench that they drive down into. It's like, what like is that for? So much of the construction of this place makes no sense to me.
Yeah, suddenly, like, you get kind of you give Corey a couple of different things to think about, and all of a sudden he's like, I really want to know what like the shipping lines are.
It's so much material. Look how much metal this thing's made out of. Where's it coming from? They don't have like complex logistics. All of society is crumbling.
I mean, like, you can think that it's just basically like repurposed like roads and stuff like that, but at the same time, like, that kind of immediately goes out.
Yeah,
the
this
door,
is
like
like
that whole
Blade
theory
Runner
gets,
shit.
like, deconstructed, because it's like you don't just build a road out of like light rail fucking tracks, and you're just like, I guess some people will trip over it, but we ain't got no more bricks. So
I mean, it's very militarized, so you could say like, oh, they're turning this into a military compound, but it's also like it's supposed to be on Lower Manhattan, so like, is it built above, like on top? Like, there's nothing recognizable of New York City inside of this barrier. It's like just its own kind of zone. I mean, it's very Final Fantasy, but the more I think about it, the more it's just like, wait, like what is the structure of this
graveyard
thing? Like it's so confusing.
Yeah, and like, it's not even that, like, while they're driving, like, there's also like a big pitfall, but like these spirits don't actually cause any environmental damage. So with these tracks, are there just like massive like drop-offs
Yes.
on like this assumed road? Because like, as we see, like, they're trying to get past one of the spirits, and then they go from like this track, and then they fall down to another one, and it actually injures one of our party members.
They get into a big old car crash.
Yeah, so, now we're starting to get like that whole like vibe of like, oh shit, like, throughout this whole escape, we're going to slowly lose kind of like one person after another, like, feeling that's like, it's not like it's completely original for like sci-fi, but like it is definitely one of those things, like, once you start to see the pattern coming, you're kind of like, well, this is how this is ending, so
Well, don't forget his classic line, ouch.
yeah. There is no context here. It's just like, talk to me, Sarge, and the first line through his mouth is ouch. You're like, oh, okay, like, so he was the comic relief character.
Then yeah, he was, like, we didn't really get to know him, but anyway, he's gone. Also, classic trope of black guy dies first, and then we get the scene of like, well, I'll stay with you, we'll all stay with you, and he's like, no one's staying with me, just give me a gun.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Sarge, what do you need? Just a gun. Give gun. Gun's all I know. So yeah, they do all that, and then like, there's a nice little moment between the captain and the sergeant where it's just like, the captain doesn't say farewell because it's not manly to be like, I always liked you, I'm glad that you were my sergeant. Like, it's all like this whole like the known unknown, like, between like military things, where you're just like, in like those war movies where like they just give them the handshake and they're like, and then like everything you need to know about what's going on with it, you're just like, oh, okay, well, I'm just reading through between the lines that it's everything that he wanted to say, but he didn't say it because he held back and he was being a man about it.
Well, it's also like saying
okay,
goodbye implies that, he's gonna die, and they don't want to admit it, right? So like, I'm not gonna say goodbye because we're gonna see you again, that kind of thing,
But I mean, in like a military aspect of it, right? Like, you would think that that's something that can't, like, especially in a dystopian world where like it happens all the time and people just get like whisked away before you even get a chance to say goodbye.
Yeah, that's true.
Wouldn't you think that like actually saying goodbye means a lot more than just literally having just like the spirit just go whoosh?
Yeah.
Because that's just how that shit happens in this world. So now we're down one party member.
Yeah. And they all have
hate to
MIB
see it.
guns now.
Yeah. They got the
big old
good
men in
guns.
black guns.
I did write a note here, like, as soon as they get to the ship, right? Like this is when it really starts to feel like chapters of a video game.
Yes.
And I know I brought it up earlier, but like as soon as they get in there, like the ship needs fuel cells. They should be fuel cells here, here, and here. And you're like, okay, so was this supposed to actually be like a game? Because that's literally like a video game script, right? You get to the thing and you're like, okay, so like, what do we need to do to get off this, get off this planet? Well, we need some fuel cells, but you have to go to these particular...
But only Old Man Jenkins has the key to the fuel cell locker, and you'll need to kill 10 rats before he'll give you the key.
Yeah. Or you can kill him, get some bad karma, and get the key.
Choose wisely.
So they divide the team up once again to go to different places, but then because they maybe realize that suddenly this is not a video game, they just magically go to one spot and they get all the fuel cells that they need. But then, oh no, the arm doesn't get off of the ship, so they can't take off because the arm is holding the ship in place. So once again, they have to take a couple of people off of here and then put them at another moment where, like, they can get the arm free from the ship.
It is kind of cool. The way they get on and off of this ship is like some kind of like cargo crane that's like got like it's like a 6-axis arm that picks them up, and like it's like this cradle that they get picked up and then moved onto it. I thought it was really cool that it can kind of move in any direction.
Yeah, it kind of gives me that like have you ever seen like the research ships that are out on the ocean, and then like
Yes.
they have like the little crane thing that like puts the little personal submarine on there.
Yeah,
like
and
that's the
dumps you
kind
in
of
the
vibe
water.
that I
Yeah.
get from that.
It's so cool.
Outside working on the to free the latch from the ship is our pilot and our his particular love interest, the more masculine character. I don't know
Soldier
why
lady.
I didn't write her. Yeah, I
You
don't
don't
know why I
need to
didn't
know
write
any of
her
these
name.
people's names. You've seen 1,000 movies with these people in them. And like the
like,
pilot is
Jane-
literally Joker from Mass Effect before Mass Effect even existed. These
Yeah,
these
so,
tropes are just timeless.
So the soldier, the Sergeant Ryan was the one they left behind. Neil,
Jane is her name.
Yeah, Neil and Jane. They have something kind
Very
of going
unique,
on.
memorable names.
Yeah, but they're kind of out there, and he's kind of like talking to himself and like doing like this whole like comic relief aspect where he's like, okay, I'm working on this thing, and like, what do you think? You know what we're gonna do is like, you know what, you need to stop talking to me because I need to focus on this thing. And you're like, dude, like Steve Buscemi, I love you, and you can just rip these lines off really quick, but like I maybe workshop a little bit of this before, or like maybe somebody should have done like a little
Maybe
bit
we
of
could have some
editing.
character development.
Yeah, like, because like this is like their penultimate scene, because spoiler alert,
Yeah.
like they get the arm kind of broken off, and then he's all doing his little
Yeah,
dance,
and
like,
then he's doing
hell
his
yeah,
end zone
hell
celebration.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, you just start seeing like orange tentacles kind of come up, and Jane's like speechless, like, oh no, and like he gets like wiggled.
Oh no, my boy toy.
Yeah, he gets wiggled, and then he gets slurped, and then she's like, mad about it, so she immediately runs over to him, cradles his body, and then like you just start seeing like the rest of the orange wiggly boos kind of come on up, and then
It's very Eldritch though. It's cool how like you think it's like one thing, and then the camera pans out and she's just like surrounded by like a dozen huge tendrils, and you're just like, oh, she's good.
yeah, and so it's super weird because it brings back that same moment with like the sergeant and the captain. It's like she doesn't really say anything to him until it's too late.
Yeah.
And then he's gone, and then she's like, she lives in this moment of regret where like she holds his body, and like I feel for her, like you can definitely sense that there's like she did that because she felt regret for like literally the moment of like not saying anything or not telling how she felt, but like she kind of lived in like this whole world where like he wasn't quite good enough for her, or like he wasn't her ideal man, but she still liked him and stuff like that. So like it's a whole bunch of weird things when you look back at like how they interacted, and it kind of leads to her like submitting her life in this moment, because she could have just easily been like, oh shit, and like ran away, but she decided to stay and like die in the same way that her brother in arm.
I do feel though that like this scene, it's so functional and so tropey that it's kind of disappointing. Like it really, to me, it actually draws attention to how little development these characters had, right? They're just like the crew, and this scene is like just gonna get rid of all the loose ends and reduce us to our like 4 main characters, right? Like that's kind of what's happening here.
They're just kind of fodder, and it's kind of shitty because they could have spent time on like the background between the sergeant and the captain. They could have spent more time on like why Jane tolerates Neil so much, and like, you know, why. Well,
that's what the Final
still
Fantasy
has a chance with her, kind of a deal.
That's what the Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within the Extended Universe books are for.
You're right. I forgot about those.
Yeah, you didn't think about that. You're not a true fan. You're not an old head.
I know. I got to get back on the Reddit, and I got to start reading all the fanfiction.
The Spirits Within subreddit.
It probably exists.
Oh my God.
We'll check it out after this one.
But so but getting back to it, like, right, so they die, and like you know, we see the captain, he's freaking out, and then there's a shot from his perspective.
He's full mad.
There's a shot from his perspective where we actually see the size of this thing. It's like one monster, and it's a big boy. It's a big old boy.
Oh, it's a massive.
It's literally
lad.
bigger than their entire ship.
Been eating his Wheaties.
Oh yeah, it's a big old bug boy too. I don't know. There's like. The construction of these things, you know, we've been saying it's eldritch, it's like it's Lovecraftian, like they have weird like bug like elements to them. Like there's a lot that's familiar about these like creatures. There's like they're like comprised of elements of like creepy crawlies, you know, from like our world. So it makes me wonder like where that structure comes from. Maybe it's like they're tapping into the primal fears that we have or something. Who can say?
Who can say? Kind of getting close to the end of this, you know, they have the ship free, it's got the fuel cells and stuff like that, and it's just kind of like Captain Gray is going to be in this whole like, you know, victorious moment of like, you get on the ship with Dr. Sid, you got to complete your mission, and then I'm just going to be here and I'm just going to shoot at this massive thing, draw its attention.
Well, he gets to save them, right? Like, yeah, he was probably mortally wounded, but he wasn't dead, and he kind of, you know, uses gun to distract the monster and like draw its attention to get them an opening, and it's sweet. You know, it's a classic trope, but it works.
So, you know, he's out there, do 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 do, and he's like,
it's very Pearl Harbor.
He's gonna go down like this, and then like, you know, just the side of it, the ship kind of comes down, and Ak is like I'm not leaving you. You need to get on this ship, like. You have to make it, and the only way that he makes it is like he does like the slow motion run, and when he jumps he throws his gun aside just so that way he could like make the landing on it. And I remember you had a really good point about this. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah,
and that'll close out this whole scene.
we've been talking about how this, you know, there's this duality between the scientists and the military, right? And like this like a difference of approach to these monsters. And you know, the captain here, he's kind of this like in this liminal place, right, where he's in love with Aki, and but he's still, you know, a soldier. And in this scene he's kind of forced to, you know, symbolically throw away his like the military part of himself, right? Like he drops the gun, and dropping the gun is what allows him to like, you know, catch on to you know, Aki. And it's like part of this transition that he goes through, right? Where he's like abandoning these weapons of war, these like this violent way, and you know, trying to become something different.
So yeah, it's that giving into your fears and like letting loose of like, you know, the things that you were comfortable with, and just like kind of living in like this whole new. Because
he literally takes a leap of faith, right?
It is the literal
he
leap of faith.
He hopes that he'll catch it. Yeah, it's cool. It works. I think it works pretty well, and it's marks this big transition point for him.
Yeah, it's a big moment, right? And so our heroes escape with barely enough to kind of keep them afloat. All they have is just the next mission, the eighth spirit, the final spirit. They just gotta kind of track it down, but they can't track it down from where they're at. They go all the way up to outer space.
Yeah, they got to go to space.
Oh, yeah. So, you know, we have like this kind of interesting scene. No real words are spoken, but like you just have this zero gravity Like Aki is just really upset. Basically so many people died. Nobody kind of knows why or how the spirits were able to kind of get in. I mean, the council didn't even know. We'll see a little point about that later on in the next scene. But you have Captain Gray and Aki Ross, like they're kind of floating in zero G, and they share like this like moment, and like they finally get that kind of kiss in there. Like what had been started in the elevator has now progressed to outer space. And
it's a very Stecky Dane moment, right? Because they're also in like a zero G kind of situation. It's cute.
And it is heavily implied that they did share some closeness. It is pretty implied by the way that they kind of like float off of the scene, and then they float out of the scene, and then like later on in like the cockpit, like they both kind of come back at the same time, and like Sid just kind of like, oh, you guys are all done. Like it's like he had that moment where like, oh, I gotta put my headphones and I'm looking straight kind of a deal.
I'm focusing on piloting the ship.
Yeah.
But I will say also, this is a like an echo of the earlier scene, right? Where it was much more juvenile the last time that he tried to like kiss her. It's like the classic, like, oh, I'm gonna have my boys like lock us in the elevator and then we'll have like our 10 minutes in heaven. And it feels really stilted. Energy. Yeah, it's very frat boy. It feels very stilted and forced. And this time it's so much more organic, right? They've like, they've shed their armor and they're totally open to each other. And they've gone through this incredible, crisis. And now they share this thing. And it works. Like, it's beautiful. And like that, now they're able to actually consummate that affection that they had with each other.
So you have that kind of play out, and then you have like this short little scene of like, General Hein, like,
and it's a really cool transition too. Like the ship itself morphs into a bullet, and then it's like fades to show like a lot of bullets floating in zero G, and we pan down to General Hein. Like, terrific. Mwah. Masterpiece.
General Hein's having a whole crisis of faith here, right? So he's like, like, what have I done? Like, I basically destroyed the city single-handedly, and then like my whole career and shit like that is over, right?
They just ruined this whole man's career, and this whole man is me.
Yeah, so like, he's got like, his gun in his hand, and he's trying to do like that whole thing where you're like, oh shit, he's
about to do
the
it.
Thing, like
he's about to bust.
Yeah. Yep, and then he goes, aha, I have so much more evil to unleash on this world. And he goes, I can't do it now.
I can't go out like a bitch. I got to do something grand.
Yeah, so I forget what he does, but I think he goes back to either his office or he gets to a computer, right? And he learns, like, he gets like a shuttle out to the Zeus cannon.
He sets course for Zeus.
And then sets course for the Zeus cannon. When he lands on it, he gets like a call from the council, and it goes, and they have to like kind of let you know that they got off like scot-free. So he's like, council, I don't know what happened, but I'm so glad to hear that you escaped New York City before it was too late. Like they have to kind of throw that out there. Like, you can't just like, oh well, they're calling you from here, they must have been safe. Like, they had to kind of throw that out there. But he spins this really quick yarn about like, we don't know what happened, we don't know how they got through our city, and again, like, he has to like really twist this story, because it's assumed that everybody that saw him do his coup died, so he's got no witnesses. He can still keep doing all of his bullshit. So he's like, yeah, no, like, I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, they're getting stronger. We have to use the Zeus cannon. We have no.
And
other
in the
choice, right?
intercut with this scene, like, in the middle, like, the other crew is also talking about their plans, and Sid said that he found this, the whatever sensor or life form for the eighth spirit, and it's at the center of the crater where the initial asteroid hit. And they're saying, oh, that's strange. Nothing should be able to live there. Only phantoms. Pregnant ellipses ...
Yeah, so they have like this thing where it's just like, well, we don't know what it is. It's somehow the phantom there has found new life, and it's attached itself to it, so we have to get down there. So now we have our second cataclysmic and our very ultimate, like our penultimate, as you say. No, penultimate was the last one. This is the actual ultimate fight,
right?
Where our heroes need to get down to the crater in Africa, cradle of all life. They have to get down there, and then they have to find the 8th spirit, get it inside of Aki, and then thing will happen.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And
then
they
next scene.
Yeah. And then you have General Hein that's like, okay, you know, like we have the go ahead. We're going to go ahead and fire the Zeus cannon. So we have Scooby-Doo and the gang versus the base cannon.
Basically.
So descending on down to Africa, we have this weird, like, to use something from earlier, it's like the little submarine.
Yeah, it is like that
thing.
It's very
so
cute.
it's so the ship kind of goes down, it flies a low altitude and just drops this little submarine that has like this little barrier around it, and inside the barrier is Aki and Captain Gray. Sid's flying the ship, and so they get to drop down there innocuously. Like, you get to see all the little spirits that are kind of going out and about, and then they're like, okay, well, you know, like we have this idea, like, okay, everything is kind of going
and this
smoothly,
crater,
you know,
we get a shot of it, and it's like kind of like really fucking scary. Like it's not just like a flat, you know, bowl. In the center of it is this like strange, like geological form of something. This like whatever kernel of these things, and it's like stretching outward like an explosion or like a flower or something. This is like black, like eldritch, horrific thing, and there's like these weird crystals all around it. It's like there's some bad juju down here. I don't have good vibes down in this crater. I don't feel so good about this one.
It's like the Dead Space monolith, right? Like it's got like that whole like weird, like
it reminds me
pyramid-esque like tendrils.
It reminds me of a particular part of Outer Wilds, which I can't talk about anymore without spoiling. But if old heads who played Outer Wilds, you know what I'm talking about.
And I don't, because I haven't played it yet. But it's on the shorter list of my long list of video games that will never end.
The people know what I'm talking about. The people out there.
Don't at me until I know, and then I'll hit you up with this like in about a year and a half when I finally get to Outer Wilds and be like, oh, that thing?
Yeah.
I know that thing now.
And then we also get a shot of like the Zeus station, and it's
what a ship this is.
We're getting an idea of what this thing's shaped like, and it looks like a thing, and we'll get more of a glimpse of it looking like that thing at later. But there's also this like kind of almost like wings, like there's these like turrets, like the cannons on it are almost like an angel wing or something. Like it looks like many different things, I will say.
Yeah, so like you have like this giant cylindrical tube, right? And then you have these like branching off wings that have like their little coolant systems on it. I think is like it's weird because we get so much more knowledge about what this thing is than anything else in the movie. Because like I would say that the top 3 things that I know about this movie is how the Zeus cannon works, where the spirits came from, and then how everything kind of comes together. Because that's it. Like you have very loose rules on how this world operates. You have very loose rules on what Aki's planning to do as soon as the spirit like gets complete. And I feel like at least that last one you should have pretty solid plan onto like what it does. Like outside of the whole Gaia theory and like Sid's notebook, like that's the only thing that I have to go off of.
Well, maybe
right?
that's
the spirit is planning to return enriched by what was.
But I mean, maybe that's kind of that comes with the territory, right? Like the whole idea is violence is easy to understand. Like the intentions of the military, it's easy to understand. It's easy to sell. You just say like, look, they're bad guy, and we use gun and we kill bad guy, and like it's very easy to understand what the Zeus cannon does. It's a cannon. It shoot the big beam. But like clinging to life and empathy, they're much more complex kind of things, you know, and it requires, as we said earlier, a leap of faith. So we are assuming that, you know, what Aki's doing is the right thing. It feels right, but we don't really know where it's leading, and that's kind of what life is like. Like killing is easy. We know where it leads. It leads to death. Life is different. Life could, you know, permutate into almost anything.
We have, as they're descending into it, we get the first shot of the Zeus cannon. And oh boy, if you thought that this meteor crater looked scary before, just wait and see what happens after this. So it goes from just like this dark, like menacing big stone thing, and then after the first shot of the Zeus cannon, it like sprouts to life. And it turns into like this, like almost like a Jaeger cell kind of a deal, right? Like a big orange world tree.
It's so horrifying. And all the big like phantom dragons start swarming, and it's like, you know, when you squish a spider egg and like a million spiders come out, and you're just like, oh no, what have I done?
Yeah, I've compounded my problems 10 times already.
Yeah.
And then well, what happens when you do something and it doesn't have the result that you expected to happen? Well, you do the same thing and you expect different results, right? So he fires once again, and this was even after like Aki trying to get a transmission in through to the general, like right before he does the
like, yo, bro, what the fuck?
Yeah, she's like, don't do this. Like, do you see what you're doing? Like, you're not only hurting the spirit, but you're also hurting Gaia. And then he's so like blinded by ambition or rage or whatever else he has left to like hold on to. He's, well, I mean, like the spirit's in you, and you know you're telling us to stop, so I'm trying to kill the spirit. So if the enemy is telling me to stop, then I should keep going. You know, like he's just circular logic of like, if bad is telling me to stop firing on bad thing, then what I'm doing is good.
Yeah, and crucially,
which is dangerous thinking.
This gigantic eldritch horror that's awoken by the Zeus cannon, one of its big ol' umbilical cord legs like slams into our heroes, our erstwhile heroes, and knocks them loose from the ship, and they have to crash land onto the crater. So they in it now.
Yeah, and then yeah, so they're not getting back out. They had a little bit of time to like kind of get in contact with, you know, Sid, and they're like, well, okay, well, we're down here. We have no choice. We have to find the 8th spirit. Where's the 8th spirit? And he goes, I lost it. And like, well, what do you mean like you lost it? It's like, well, I think the Zeus cannon killed it. And you're like, well, shit.
It's very anticlimactic. You're just like, oh.
Yeah, so they're down there. They're in a position where there's absolutely no like escape, right? Like above them is this gigantic orange thing, and they have like numerous small spirits that are seem to forget that they can just go through things because they're crawling down the wall. Like they're descending slowly when they can like glide or just kind of come out of the ground willy-nilly, as we've seen multiple times before. So it's like it feels like they're only doing it as if they're like, hey, you know, it'd be really dramatic. What if we just crawled towards these people and just really made them understand how fucked they are? And then right below her is this big blue like ocean thing. And then, you know, all in one moment, she's like, there's a spirit and there is Gaia. The Gaia theory is correct. Yeah. I was right. Like, you know, like if there's any time to be right, it's at the final moments
vindication.
Of your life. But like, yeah. And then I believe there's a third fire of the, and
crucially the crew is even telling
straight down
like,
into it.
Yo, bro, this like the weapon is overheated, and he's just like, keep shooting. Like, does he have a no weapons training?
Yeah, I don't know. So like there's one more shot that goes straight down, and like it goes through the spirit and it actually penetrates, and it like damages Gaia, right? So now like the orange is getting even closer to the blue, and that's like
that bad.
We're left to believe that that's like, if orange touches blue, orange is gonna take over in like the ultimate fashion, right? But so like right when all hope seems lost, there's like a reading, and they're like, the 8th spirit, we got it. And they're like, what? Like, yeah, Aki, you got the 8th spirit. Like it must have found some life to cling on to. And so this was the thing that I wanted to talk to you about. Like at the very beginning of it, I was like, do I do I spoil this big epiphany that I had or not? So the reason why Aki, from what I'm understanding of what this movie's trying to tell me, the reason that Aki got the eighth spirit and then the eighth spirit found its way to Aki is because it found new life to attach onto. The new life was literally the freshly fertilized embryo inside of Aki via Captain Gray.
Oh, shit. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, so I didn't get this until the third time that I watched the movie because it's just so like it's
lot.
not that it's out there. Yeah, it's not that it's out there, but like God, like just randomly they just kind of pull that out of their ass. Like it's actually a solid plot point.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting too because she has like an encounter down there. Like the screen gets all hazy and she like collapses, right? And then there's like she clutches her chest and there's like all these like purple the kind of swirls that merge together into like one kind of humanoid figure, not humanoid but like bipedal figure, and they like make eye contact and you're not really sure what it is, right? But then it like shoves its tendrils into her. And then she like
specifically in a particular location.
Yeah. And not just there, all over her body, right? And then there's this swirling blue that goes down below her feet, and then we see the same like standing on the surface of water, like looking up through a clear kind of membrane thing again. And then we return.
Yeah, like how we open up the movie.
Yeah, exactly, like the beginning of the movie. And then we return to her. She looks over the vista of this like battleground that she's been having these visions about. And it's lush and green, you know, and it seems like it's spreading from her. And it specifically says, like, with the hope of new life has Gaia changed the phantom within. And we got there, folks. We got there. The spirits within, baby.
Yes, like 99.9%. It's so frustrating that they did not say the spirit within.
I wonder, I mean, this movie, when did The Phantom Menace come out?
2001, I want to say.
So same year, right?
It
Did they
had to
change
have
the
been.
title because of like LucasArts was going to sue them if they called it The Phantoms Within?
God, that'd be hilarious if that is. That's the deep lore,
deep lore,
of
yeah.
the movie.
Incredible. We're really uncovering the mystery here, folks. We're getting right to the bottom of it.
Yeah, so we have that. So now, okay, Aki has the eighth spirit. She's got all the spirits. Now we're kind of at a loss to kind of figure out what's going on. We get a sweet cut back to General Hine doing what he do best, which is murder his own people. And he's taken it upon himself to go into some part of like control.
Yeah. He got to reload Big Gun.
Like he goes deep into the bowels of Big Gun and like he's just hitting buttons, pulling levers, and like there's just alarms going off.
He is going
everywhere
absolutely hog wild.
and he's just like fire, and like he's like there's explosions, and he's just like he thinks he does everything, and he hits the whole button, and then he goes, well, why is it not firing? And then like he starts to look around him and he goes, did I do that? And then it all explodes.
Yeah. And I think
just
is that scene where we get like a full profile view of the big gun, or not yet?
No, we actually got the full profile of it. Like when after he like docked into it, like it zoomed out and it said like the zoom.
Yeah, because it's shaped like a fallopian tube. Can we say that? I mean, that's what it looks like. It's like a big old T, big old Y. You know,
in comparison to like the eighth spirit and then how Aki gets it, I think that they're really trying to like, you know, really trying to hit home with this.
Like
metaphor.
I said earlier, this movie not subtle. But there's also a conversation.
But it's just subtle enough that it takes 3 times for me to realize that she was pregnant, and that the eighth spirit found her because it joined with, I guess, her soon to be baby.
And I mean, you know, it just goes to show, right? If you don't like a movie, just watch it until you're ready to die, and then you'll like it.
Yeah, just beat yourself into submission of your own
Submit
choice.
to the spirits within. There's also a scene like on the ship right before we cut to Hine. where like Aki is talking to the captain and she's like, give me your ovo pack. Like I need to use it to do something. And he's like, but we'll be defenseless, right? She's like, no, you have to trust me. And it's another instance, right, of him giving up like his like violent ways and trusting and leap of faith. But she explains that like they can use the energy from the like ovo pack to like create a barrier or something, some sciencey shit. But they're again drawing attention to this connection between like the technology that protects them and the life inside Aki and this whole thing. Like there's a kind of continuum here, but she needs to use it to project the eighth wave. That's critical. So they have to let their shields down, and then they use that to, it's a metaphor, right? They lower their shields so they can project out and like contact this other this other mind or whatever.
Finally, we're at the last like 10 minutes of the movie, and I forget exactly how it happens, but Captain Gray gets injured, right? So I think it was one of the Zeus cannon blasts that like injured him on like the descent down, and it's looking like our boy ain't gonna make it. So. And it's also looking
basically
really dire
the Zeus cannon,
right?
the final blast hits and it just fucks everything up. And then he's like crushed underneath a bunch of like metal and stuff. And Aki saves him, but he's injured. Yeah.
So you have like literally 20 feet above you is this orange wall that's just like slowly like Indiana Jones style, just kind of crushing down. And then you have like this glowing blue thing underneath, right? Of like Gaia. And then it's this cliff face, and it's this like overwhelming of like it's all over for us. But he's like, okay, you know what, like give the spirit to me, like project the wave through me and use me as a conduit to make your whole journey come through, because I'm already not gonna make it.
You saved my life once and now I need to return the favor. It's it's like reciprocation.
And so like this is
I want you to save yourself is what he said.
And so I guess her entire plan was to get the spirits and then sacrifice herself, so that way the spiritual menace would be solved.
Yeah.
And so now he's like, well, I'm in no condition to like live. And we actually get like an actual genuine emotional pull, because these characters have actually had time to develop
to go through an arc.
You actually can care. Yeah. So you can actually care about them. And then
the only two characters that have any growth, really, and even Aki doesn't really have that much growth. It's mostly just the captain.
You have like this really nice scene that's like kind of emotional. I wouldn't say it's super emotional, but like there's a couple of tugs where the wave starts to get down. He reaches his hand up to meet it, and he's holding.
I do want to say before we get there, though, the orange like force bearing down on them. It's very clearly like membranous, right? It's like this big membrane. And to me, it feels, very like birth-like or something like, embryonic. Like it has this kind of organic, like, it feels like I don't know, like it says embryo to me, right? Like birth or something like coming towards them. Like they're inside of a womb or something like that. It's got little veins and stuff. Yeah.
I can see that. Yeah, it does have like, I think there's even like a faint, like almost like heartbeat kind of sound. Like there's like a sound effect like along those lines. I think I remember hearing something like that. He touches the thing, and like you can start to see like his kind of spirit like pulling away from his body, as we've seen a couple of times before. But what's weird is from Aki, what we see is like this weird like energy kind of pulse. And crucially,
he says to her, "I love you," which I don't think he's actually said before.
Yeah, and like this is actually like it's a complete flip from like all the other stuff that he's like, because he was full on military man, and like in like the last couple of scenes of it, he's just been very soft and emotionally available and like in the moment.
Right.
So it's very important in that moment that he's like, he knows it's the end. He knows how much she means to him. He's trying to do two things. He's trying to save her, and he's also trying to help her complete her goal, so that way she gets a new lease on life, right?
Right.
He gets pulled away.
He turns to Capri Sun.
Energy from Aki like transfers through their hands, and then like as it goes up into the orange, there's kind of like this like this blast of like energy.
Yeah, and then the whole thing gets Capri Sunned.
It really does, though. Just slurps it all up, and then it just like it transforms, and then it just like dissipates.
Right.
And it dissipates into like this nice rain of like light blue.
Right. And also it sends this column like up into the sky, and it's directly contrasted with, you know, the downward vertical beam of the Zeus cannon in orange, right? This time it's this upward ascent of like a blue beam.
I mean, we don't actually get to see where it goes. The assumption is that it goes back to the source of where like it's sending the spirits back.
I hadn't thought of that. At the very least, it mirrors that thing, right? Like the shrapnel coming to us and sending back like love and new life back. Like that's cool. I like that.
And then like the final scene is like Sid's out, you know, reaching his hand out, and like the blue thing is kind of coming through his hand. He goes,
"Oh, it's warm."
Yeah. Oh, it's warm. And then like Aki's being lifted out of the crater, and then like it just shows a nice mountain vista, and then the credits roll, and you're like, what?
We did it.
Like I have so many. Yeah, I have
we did
so
it,
many
Pat.
more questions.
We saved the city.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I mean it's okay. There's this mountain range here, right? And you and I were talking about this, like what it means, right? Because they see the dawn over this mountain range, you know, near northern Africa, and there's like an eagle flying, right? And at first, I thought it was like, oh, is it kind of like the ark, you know, like a dove with like, you know, with new like a, you know, an olive branch to show that the flood has receded. But like, no, actually you were talking about something in like, you know, in like Greek mythology, right?
Prometheus and the Caucasus Mountains, like, I believe is something we were talking about.
Yeah. Cause we looked it up, right? And like, I think that these are supposed to be the Caucasus Mountains. And yeah, that's like actually where the Prometheus myth happened.
I don't know about that. Cause like aren't the Caucasus Mountains like far up closer to like Europe? Or are they actually in Africa? Because like the crater is in Africa.
They're on the border. They're on the border of like the Mediterranean and Asia. And yeah, like there's a lot of myths about Titans, but specifically the Promethean myth. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized, you know, there's a lot of parallels there. This idea of like fire as technology and the like power it gives you, but it comes with destructiveness, and this idea of like a gift from the gods that tortures you and your punishment for it. But also this like that I don't know if it was the Greeks, but like the people of the Caucasus Mountains, they believed that like this mountain was you know, a symbol of the end of the world, but also the place that life comes from. And so that idea of like ends being beginnings and that cycle kind of thing, I feel like it really ties in with the like themes of this, you know, the duality at the heart of this movie.
Closing thoughts. Do you have any closing thoughts about this movie? How you felt about it? Some, if not the only couple of themes within it?
I mean, this movie's a lot, and I'm not going to say it's a good movie, but there's really cool stuff in it. And personally, for my own ethics, you know, my own kind of spiritual background, it's very meaningful. There's a lot of really important lessons to be. It's a little like hackneyed, a little pat, right? Like, oh, killing people bad. But I think it's a lesson that we need right now. I mean, you know, on the brink of global war, maybe, like this idea of like war and violence and distrust and antipathy being, you know, this destructive feedback loop that can obliterate everything. And there's always, even at the end, the hope, you know, that you can reach out and, you know, start fresh and, you know, cling to empathy. I don't know. It's beautiful. I wish it had been executed better. Like, I wish it wasn't a fucking mess. But yeah. I like what they were trying to do with it. I think I can say that.
There's a couple of themes in here that I do really like. I like that they play around with like this whole Gaia hypothesis. The design space for this movie was very close to, you know, Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9 is when the story, the production, all that stuff was kind of really taken off. I like a lot of this, like they weren't ahead of their time with like the whole military scientist like duality, which is the military we have to attack and defeat, and the scientists we have to understand and cure aspect of it. They're not original with it, but like I definitely think that that could have been a lot better. The weirdest
yeah,
thing
go ahead.
that my last point is like the weirdest thing that they do in this is that they really kind of press off of this whole idea of the orange alien violence versus the blue human kindness.
Yeah.
Kind of a deal. And like, it's weird that they're making like violence and stuff like that is such an alien concept, as if it's like it wasn't something that is a natural.
Well, I'm not sure. I think I originally thought the same thing, that like, oh, the human stuff is blue and the alien stuff is orange. But I think it's more the phantoms are red and orange, and the phantoms they don't all look the same as the creatures that we saw in the visions. And I think that the orange and red, it implies the spirit of like malice and the spirit of rage and the spirit of resentment, like what the like curse, the virus of, you know, violence and warfare is. And blue represents, you know, life and you know, empathy and this like idea of like rebirth. It's like this cooling water, right? Like water versus fire. And I feel like that's a much stronger read on it. Because like there are some times where red is associated with humans, right? Like the Zeus canon is an orange kind of thing. And there's times when the blue is associated with the aliens. Like there's even a purple alien. So I don't think it's as cut and dry. And I think that we shouldn't really consider the phantoms and the aliens to be the same thing, because they're like some kind of like phenomena that happened after all of the aliens were destroyed.
So kind of like not all the aliens are like this orange malice. It's just that a certain amount of them are this orange malice. Because I mean, there are like the big creatures, and it doesn't really seem like they specifically are bent out of shape on.
I mean, it's implied,
right? Like it seems like the soldiers are the ones that are actually pursuing.
And it's implied that, you know, this thing consumed their planet and obliterated it, and it's like a tragedy. It's not like that was the foundation of their society. It was like some kind of war broke out, and it, you know, they blew it all up, right? And another thing that that struck me is, you know, this idea of Gaia theory, right? Like we talked a little bit about it in the beginning, but Gaia theories are a real thing, even for planet Earth. And you can go more metaphysical and more religious with it, and think that really there's a spirit at the center of the Earth. But even in ecology, the function of Gaia theory works. You know, because there ultimately is a single ecosphere that all life on Earth is a part of, that you can't really escape. Like, even though humans would like to think that we are like separate from our environment, we aren't, right? We still breathe air. We need the temperature to be a certain way. We need energy. We need sunlight. Like all the things that life needs, we continue to need. And, you know, we don't really escape that sphere, right? And so in a sense, like I was saying at the beginning, you know, you can go in the macro sense, like a fractal kind of thing, groups of groups of groups. You could define Earth as a single organism. And I think it's really important for people to grapple with this idea of us all being part of the same, you know, the same living thing, like Mother Earth, whatever you want to call it. And how like that can be laughed at by people who are deeply, you know, and like anti-life, right? Like biophobic or something, this like cold, unfeeling mechanism of like the military industrial complex, for example, right? Or government, like bureaucracy, these things that separate us from what's really important. And how the way the heroes win in this movie is by throwing that away and reaching out to each other and remembering what's important. And what's important is life and love, you know, and humanity and kindness. Yeah,
I like those points. Those all definitely ring true to me.
And also, you know, I mentioned, you know, this growing war because it's topical, you know, the war in Ukraine. But this movie was written in 2001, and in 2001 we were talking about global warming, and we're still fucking talking about global warming. We haven't really done much, but that is an existential threat to our ecosphere. And so that I feel like that's the strongest read of this thing, is that like this machine at the center of our society is pushing us to the brink and is going to destroy everything, right? Like that's the most obvious read to me. And the way we break free of that is to understand that the systems in place are not helping us. Actually, they're making things worse. And we need to grapple with that. We need to understand the legacy of our decisions and the potential outcome of those decisions, and see, our future, right? Our future is destruction, and we need to find a way to start fresh, start over, do something different,
I couldn't agree more. Well, I believe that takes all the time that we have for this radio.
We're gonna triangulate our signals soon.
I think we've successfully taken it over. Yeah, we'll have to see if we can't do this one again. They might get smart and they might be able to take this back from us. But I think I should go ahead and we should get these radio towers reconfigured. That way nobody is none the wiser.
Would you like to fire my Zeus cannon?
Yo, hell yeah. So, I don't have any credits, unfortunately. So I'm just gonna, I know it's totally ready with this. So I'm just going to thank, Carl, Curtis, and Alex
homies
for letting us take over this podcast. This was an idea that we had way back in November last year, and been trying to figure out how to really get this through and have this be kind of something that's kind of fun. And it just so happened that April Fools landed on this exact day in this exact place, centralized entirely in your area in your podcast. So, I'll send you a picture later. So, thank you guys so much for letting us take over your podcast. And let's go ahead and cut transmission.
Bye.
It is true.
Rated PG-13. Opens everywhere July 11.